When did a teacher watch a student get beaten unconscious and keep eating her lunch? I was sitting 3 rows back in Mrs. Vance's substitute English class when Kyle Brennan threw the first punch at Aaron Diaz. It was a Friday in November, the kind of gray afternoon where everyone's just counting down minutes until the weekend. Mrs. Vance had arrived that morning with a rolling suitcase and a Tupperware container of pasta salad, announcing she'd be covering for our regular teacher, Mr. Hutchinson, who was out for medical leave. She didn't introduce herself beyond writing her name on the board, didn't ask our names, didn't even look up from her phone while taking attendance by just saying "here" for everyone, whether they responded or not. The first 40 minutes of class had been silent reading time, which really meant everyone was on their phones while she sat at the desk eating her lunch and watching something on her laptop with earbuds in. I was actually reading because I'd gotten into the book, some thriller about a girl who witnesses a crime, when I heard Kyle's voice cut through the quiet classroom with that particular edge that meant trouble was coming. Aaron had been sitting 2 seats ahead of me, hunched over his desk trying to finish homework for another class. Kyle and his 2 friends, Nathan and Derek, had been throwing paper balls at the back of Aaron's head for the past 10 minutes. Small stuff at first, then harder, trying to get a reaction. Aaron kept ignoring them, which only made Kyle more determined. I watched Mrs. Vance glance up once when a paper ball bounced off Aaron's shoulder, saw her eyes track the situation for maybe 2 seconds before she went back to her pasta salad, stabbing a cherry tomato with her plastic fork. Kyle stood up then, walked over to Aaron's desk, and swept all his papers onto the floor in one dramatic motion. The sound of textbooks and notebooks hitting linoleum echoed through the classroom, and everyone looked up. Aaron's jaw tightened, but he just bent down to pick up his stuff without saying anything. That's when Kyle grabbed the back of Aaron's collar and yanked him upwards so hard I heard fabric ripping. "You think you're too good to respond when I'm talking to you?" Kyle said, his voice loud enough that there was no way Mrs. Vance didn't hear him. I looked at the front of the room, and Mrs. Vance was still eating, her eyes fixed on her laptop screen. She had to see what was happening because Kyle and Aaron were maybe 15 feet from her desk, right in her line of sight. Aaron tried to pull away, but Kyle shoved him backward into the desk. The metal legs scraped against the floor with this horrible screeching sound that made my teeth hurt. Nathan and Derek were laughing now, that cruel hyena sound that bullies make when they know they're winning. Aaron's face was red, his hands balled into fists at his sides, and I could see him deciding whether to fight back or keep trying to de-escalate. "Mrs. Vance!" I called out, my voice cracking a little because I wasn't used to speaking up in class. She didn't respond, didn't even look up, just kept chewing her pasta with this distant expression like she was watching a show she'd seen before and wasn't particularly invested in. Kyle grabbed Aaron's shirt again, this time with both hands, pulling him face to face. "You're gonna apologize for disrespecting me," Kyle said, and Aaron finally snapped back that Kyle was the one disrespecting everyone by being an asshole. That's when Kyle punched him. Not a shove or a slap, but a real punch, his fist connecting with Aaron's jaw with a crack that made several girls in the front row gasp. Aaron stumbled backward, his hand going to his face, and I saw blood starting to drip from his lip. The classroom erupted in noise, people yelling, chairs scraping as students stood up to get a better view or back away from the violence. Mrs. Vance looked up then. Finally, her fork paused halfway to her mouth. She made eye contact with Kyle, who was advancing on Aaron again, his fist still raised. Then she looked back down at her laptop and took another bite of pasta. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. A student had just been punched in the face, was bleeding, and the adult in the room who was supposed to stop this was literally eating lunch like nothing was happening. Aaron tried to put his hands up in a defensive position, but Kyle was bigger, angrier, had 2 friends backing him up. He hit Aaron again, this time in the stomach, and Aaron doubled over with a sound like all the air being forced out of his lungs. Nathan kicked Aaron's legs out from under him, and he went down hard, his head bouncing off the floor with a thud that made my stomach turn. Kyle started kicking Aaron while he was on the ground. Not wild kicks, but deliberate, focused on his ribs, his back, his head. Aaron tried to curl into a ball, his arms over his face, but 3 against 1 when you're already down doesn't leave many defensive options. The sound of shoes hitting flesh and bone mixed with Aaron's grunts of pain and the screaming of other students. Someone yelled to call 911. Another person ran toward the door, but Derek blocked it, standing in front of the exit with his arms crossed like this was all some kind of game. I looked at Mrs. Vance again, and she was scrolling on her laptop now, using one hand to eat while the other clicked her trackpad. Her face was completely neutral, like she was checking her email or shopping online while a student was being beaten 6 feet away from her. I stood up without really deciding to, my book falling to the floor. My hands were shaking, and my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I walked toward the front of the room, toward Mrs. Vance's desk, but what happened then changed everything. Full stories linked below or on my channel.